Ghana, the beacon of democracy on the African continent, has once again hoisted the flag of democracy so high on the continent, particularly in the sub-region, which is heavily challenged by security insurgencies, issues of terrorism and political instability, and also military takeover, where we've seen it happen in Guinea, seen it happening in Niger, Burkina Faso, among others. But at the just ended December 7 elections, the country went to the polls where over 18 million Kenyans actually came out in their numbers to exercise their franchise and then make a decisive decision on who should lead the country in the next 4 years. They have spoken, the verdict is out, and the Electoral Commission has also announced the election result, where former President John Dramani Mahama has emerged winner in the particular elections. But the question still remains, was the process free? Was it credible? And was it indeed transparent as well? We are going to have a conversation about this from before elections, during elections, and post elections as well. We have seen issues of violence happening one way or the other, where that seem to be occupying various state institutions, among others. Is that what we're looking for after a peaceful elections? To help me do this particular conversation is Joseph Frimpong, who is the project officer with the Center for Democratic Development Ghana, CDD Ghana. And I've also been joined by a political science lecturer with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Dr. Amache Boateng. And we are going to have a conversation on Citizens Up, your number one citizen engaging radio program, where we give you the microphone to air your opinion, and we also critically look at issues of democracy and good governance. The topic is conditions for free, credible, and transparent elections. Focus on Ghana with special analysis on the just ended elections. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Right. Good morning, Dr. Amache. I trust Joseph Frimpong would obviously in the course of the conversation. But Doug, thank you so much for your time with me. First of all, let me bring you in. Share with us your general analysis or impression about the just ended December 7 polls. In your opinion, was it credible? Was it transparent? And was it again fair enough?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and let me say good morning to your viewers. The elections have come to an end. Generally speaking, yes, it was credible. It was credible. It was free. It was generally fair. But then it does not necessarily mean that our electoral processes are themselves ready to provide that free, fair elections. Generally, they were free in the sense that political parties, individuals were able to go about their campaigning without any hindrance. The state did not come in the way of anybody. I mean, there were nothing by way of institutional constraints placed in the way of anybody. So as much as possible, it was free from that angle. And then they were generally fair because the electoral procedures produced the winners that indeed won. In a way, the winners reflect the position of voters as much as possible. But then I have an issue here because it looks as if, the NDC, for example, had to reposition themselves ahead of the electoral processes simply because they did not have confidence in the Electoral Commission. And if we come to acknowledge that even as we speak now, some constituencies' results have not come out, although there were no such challenges in the polling stations that produced those results, then you realize that the action of the NDC by collating the results from the polling stations and quickly, once they had the numbers that enabled them to believe that those numbers should be enough to produce a winner. And then came out the way they did. In a way, they jumped ahead of the processes, the procedures that might have marred the overall outcome if they were to wait patiently for the Electoral Commission to go through all the procedures, processes, constituency coalitions, regional coalitions before the national level, if you like, management and announcement of the presidential results, something else might have happened. So yes, the results, the elections produced a fair outcome, given that the ones that people voted for have come out as winners. But still, I believe strongly that the processes, the procedures, if they had been allowed to unfold by themselves, something else might have happened.
Right. So we'll definitely come back to that particular concern where you believe that the NDC went ahead of the electoral process by collating their very own internal data first, which in a way could have marred, leading to the non-declaration of some election results in some other constituencies, in as much as they keep coming in one after the other. But Mr. Joseph Frimpong has also joined the conversation. He is the project officer with the Center for Democratic Development Ghana, CDD Ghana, and he was very, very busy throughout this whole entire process, before, during, and also after the process. Joseph, welcome to the program, Citizens Hour.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you very much, and good morning to Dr. Amachi Boating. Dr. Amachi Boating was my lecturer at K University.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Right. So, Joseph, share with us your initial assessment, because you were doing more of, CDD's work, up and down throughout the process. What would you describe the entire outcome of the election like? In your opinion, Doc says it's been generally fair, but he believes that, the NDC really did a lot to ensure this particular fairness. In your opinion, what can you describe to be the transparency rate of these particular elections?
Okay, thank you, Chris. So when it comes to assessing the transparency of the 2024 general elections in Ghana, as we all know, election is a process and not just an event that we held on the 7th December. So I would like to just give some few touches on the pre-election phases that led to the December 7 elections. So when we take the pre-election phase from the beginning, when the Electoral Commission was able to give their calendar for the year to political parties, when they were able to also to have so many IPAC meetings to brief political parties about the various happenings. And as regards the biometric voter registration, all the political parties' agents participated, and the Electoral Commission was able to at least hold meetings wherever there is misunderstanding between the commission and the political parties. So those meetings went a very long way to resolve the differences. There were some issues that were related to the voters register. And for that one, the Electoral Commission through and the NDC through IPAC were able to resolve it and do a re-exhibition of the voters register. So looking at those phases, pre-election phases, and bringing together the printing of the ballot boxes and the ballot papers, they were able to do away with the preconceived ideas and all the perceptions that the people had about them. They bent all the ballot papers in front of political party agents. So basically, from the pre-election phase and also pre-election assessment that we did, we actually sent about 97 pre-election observers to observe the environment from October 2024 to the 5th of December. And we didn't encounter any major challenge, such as designating a place as a no-go area for political party campaigns and all those kind of things. So generally, from the pre-election phase, things were really transparent between the Electoral Commission and the major stakeholders, that are the political parties. And on the E-Day too, that's 7th December, things were actually in place when we held our midday situational reports around 12 p.m. on the 7th December. We realized that although there were some challenges as regards sending electoral materials to some polling stations and late setup within few polling stations, the majority of them started at the right time, and also they had all the materials that they needed for the elections. So from the pre-election phase to the E-Day, things were actually transparent and they were in order. The only challenge that we had to do with the collation of the results at the constituency collation centers. And as a country, we have been facing such challenges that we need to address going forward.
Right. So we'll definitely come to the challenges faced during the coalition center, because indeed the next layer of election coalition, which is at the regional level, is one that the opposition current winner believes that is one that is also delaying the process and an avenue that could be a Reagan platform for the elections, if not for their vigilance as well. But in all of these, once again, one would say Ghana has won, and looking at the posture from the two political parties, the NPP's leader, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, conceding an early loss in the elections. I would want both of you to share on that particular posture of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, leaving us in a peaceful state at the moment. Dr. Amache.
Yes, actually, generally speaking, looking at it from, the international perspective, statesmanship has been exhibited. He has placed the Ghanaian state interest first before personal and party. And then, as you rightly said, it should have served to calm down nerves and tensions. It didn't. It didn't. And that is an interesting thing. But I emphasize, generally speaking, and then looking at the issue from an international perspective, for the reason that, I'm very critical about some of these issues. Yes, Dr. Bawumia should be credited with what he has done. But then I also argue that the NDC pushed him. I argue that the NDC made it very difficult for Dr. Bawumia to do otherwise. Because when the NDC came out with their press engagement, at which moment they told everybody about the outcome of their collation, and they emphasized collation of results on the pink sheets. The pink sheets are authoritative documents that the elections work with, and they are the, the primary areas of the outcome of the elections. The results are there. Pink sheets from the polling stations. The moment you have the pink sheets, if you collate them, you have the outcome of the elections. NDC was very careful to emphasize that. And so they demonstrated the outcome in no ambiguous term, and directly, personally called on Dr. Bawumia to concede. NDC did that. It was a salvo. It was up to Dr. Bawumia to keep quiet and take a blame for anything that happened because of the confusion, misunderstanding, or it was up to him to buy the bait and come public and acknowledge defeat. So we cannot do away with this aspect of the whole thing. That notwithstanding, if you place it in the context generally of African politics, somebody would have remained adamant and not respond positively the way Dr. Bawumia did. Here in Africa, I won't be surprised someone would do that. And seriously speaking, there's no disrespect here, but I don't expect Dr. Bawumia's boss, Nana Addo, to have responded the way Dr. Bawumia did. In Dr. Bawumia's place, Nana Addo would not respond. You know him. So you can't take anything away from Dr. Bawumia. But then the NDC did what they did.
Right. Mr. Joseph, you look at issues of incumbent party where there were one point or the other an attempt to rig the elections where extra ballot papers, which were not part of the whole EC's activities, were about to be included into the whole election process. In as much as they were halted at a very early stage, what does that mean to the whole election process? Because if the choice of the people ought to be respected, why then decide to go in for Reagan? Mr. Joseph.
Yeah, correct. Okay. So you were referring to the videos that circulated on social media as regards ballot papers being packed and discovered by the NDC, right?
Yeah.
We as an observer group, we didn't actually, in fact, we were not able to authenticate that information. So I'm going to speak generally to such issues that they do come up with elections.
Okay.
So for elections, a lot of things do happen. And now we are in an era whereby there might be misinformation and disinformation as related to rigging of elections. So whether that's one or something that's really happened, or it was just a misinformation or disinformation, one thing that we know is that the voice of the people has spoken, and Ghanaians have made a choice. So that shows that the power of the people is above every other power. When the people speak, that's it. And it ought to be respected.
Okay. Again, let me still stay with you, Mr. Joseph Frimpong, because we look at voter turnout and CDD, you also did your coalition, but the Electoral Commission placed voter turnout at 60.9%, a reduction from the previous 2020 election voter turnout. What would you describe the electorate concerns about issues of election, which is very important to the governance of their own affairs in terms of the voter turnout?
Generally, and across some parts of Africa, voter turnout is something that we need to pay attention to. Because if you observe the elections in Nigeria and other African countries, you realize that the voter turnout was really low. So as an Africa or Ghana specifically, when we encounter such challenges, we need to find out and increase public participation when it comes to elections. And at times too, you can't usually blame them too much, because when governance is disconnected from the people, people will actually lose interest in the state of affairs. And these things do reflect in how they turn out to vote. So I think going forward as a country, we should let governance reflect what the people want. And we should try as much as possible, civil societies and all other stakeholders should try and promote participation in the civic affairs of the country. When we do that, we will be able to increase participation during elections. And we should also make sure that political parties and governments do not act in a way whereby they do not take the concerns of the citizens into consideration when planning the developmental aspects of the country.
Right. We'll come to issues of violence, but Dr. Amache Boateng, I see you really want to have a bite on issues of voter turnout.
Yeah. Joseph established the normative aspect of this voter turnout thing. It's sort of come out as a manifestation of, a governance outcomes. And in Ghana, I was just trying to get the data. I just didn't get it early enough to use it to do my analysis. But what I know is that, generally speaking, in Ghana, apart from the very first one in 1992, where the voter turnout was quite low, generally there's a pattern. In Ghana, the presidents have had 2 terms and then get voted out. The 8-year term thing and is going on. In almost all the cases, the second term of any government in Ghana's Fourth Republic has registered lower voter turnout in almost all the cases. The second terms have registered lower voter turnout. This one, apart from the very first election in 1992, the one that we registered in the just ended election happens to be the lowest. And I think, Joseph established the normative thing. People are not satisfied, the outcome of governance. And so since governance has not delivered to, meet or match people's expectations, they have difficulties going to the polls to vote. And this has happened in all the time that we have gone into elections, especially during the second term of any sitting government.
Right. So if you just joined the conversation, this is Ed Sense, and today we're looking at conditions for free, credible, and transparent elections with special focus on Ghana. We're doing an analysis of the just ended elections that has historically brought back John Dramani Mahama into the seat of governance once again. But prior to that, in all of these, there were some pockets of violence seen across the country during the elections. And Dr. Amache, I spoke to you early on, and you said that no single strain of hair should be lost in this particular election. These were your very worst. But unfortunately, we have seen some life lost. At least one person we know in Nyankpala lost his life on the day of elections. Want to find out, could all of these things have been prevented, and were there some key lessons that we really haven't learned from the 2020 elections where 8 lives were lost until date we still haven't accounted for them?
Okay, there's an interesting development here, because what happened in 2020, the life loss came out of members of the state security. But this time around, the life lost did not really happen because of the actions and inactions of state security officers. And on several occasions that we have the video capturing, the engagement of, let me say, some citizens of Ghana, some voters, some electorates, engaging members of the security, you could see how restrained the security officers, men and women, and their officers were, meaning that they had been properly cautioned not to go there and attack any civilian. And in fact, the military boss gave that indication. He even suggested that when provoked, that they will use, I'm quoting him, soft energy. And indeed, I did see that. They were restrained. The challenge came from, some of the electorates. The difficulty came from some of the electorates. Some of them simply misunderstand what individuals can do and how far they could go as much as possible, even in challenging issues, even in doing what they have to do, policing the ballots to make sure that they are not stolen. They have a duty to do that. But then all these things are defined by law. There should be a limit, how, something establishing how far they could go. I think some of them didn't get the proper education yet. I'll also say that all the life lost could have been, avoided. They were preventable. I think we have got a lot of education to do, going into elections, being vigilant should be explained, operationalized properly for people to understand what it is to be vigilant during the electoral processes. And then being violent should also, so the two are not the same, but then we saw them. We saw them. That is unfortunate, given the number of times that we have gone into elections in this country. I still maintain my position that a strand of hair shouldn't have been lost. I still maintain my position. You see, Chris, I studied in Norway, and I really experienced how cool, how gentle, but principled, how very principled Norwegians are. And I learned a lot there. We have a lot of work to do here in Ghana, to be able to understand, these differences and to make sure that, engagement with the public, state, society engagement, we should maintain the balance and ensure that the state, generally speaking, is protected. We should all protect the state. Some of the things were interesting. Some of the, videos indicating people having looted property. And then the information we have is that the MPP people themselves, that is information we have. All these things are yet to be investigated properly. Had sent some of those things to particular areas to be distributed among their people if they were to win. And that people got wind of that when it didn't happen. And so others went in there and decided to make good those things. So as of now, we have a lot of stories being turned around to explain those videos. All those things are simply not desirable. We can avoid them.
Right. Mr. Joseph, your men were on the grounds and you were also doing lots of monitoring. From the headquarters of CDD, what would you describe the various violence that really happened across the country during the election period?
So I would like to start from where Dr. Machi left, especially on his point on the people being educated on what it means by being vigilant when it comes to protecting the ballot. It's something that as a country, we should take into consideration. As a country, during the voting processes, we do not encounter much challenges. Our challenges do arise when it comes to the collation of results. And this is due to the fact that when there is a perception of election results management, when there is a perception that election results are not managed well, and people get the idea that the results could be manipulated during the collation center at the constituencies. These things lead to the violence that we do often see when we are collating the results. And people do not actually know what goes on at the collation centers because they mostly often happen in a room. They mostly happen in a room, and these people are outside. They don't actually know what is going on in the room.
Does it boil down to trust to the EC?
Pardon?
Does it boil down to trust to the EC or the trust in the EC, people's confidence in the EC as well?
Okay, per the Afrobarometer survey, we know that the trust level in the Electoral Commission is low. But I'm building the point that going forward as a country, the way we collate results at the constituency level and all the collation centers should be transparent to the people. When I talk of transparency, I'm referring to the fact that not everybody can be in the room. And these party people, some of them have some preconceived idea of results being manipulated. So since all of them cannot enter into the room, we have two options. Either we don't allow people to come to the collation center during the collation, or we provide some screens for people outside for them to know what is actually happening in the room. We need to make them, we need to convince them that, in fact, we do not change results at the collation centers. We just bring them together and announce it as it is. So that perception of people about results manipulation actually leads to the violence that we do encounter during the collation of results. And this has happened over the years. And as a country going forward, we need to leverage on technology to address some of these challenges. And it is something that CDD, Ghana, Codeo, and Codeo took it up from 2023. We tried and engaged the Electoral Commission and other stakeholders on how we can leverage on technology to transmit results from the polling station to a dedicated website by the Electoral Commission, so that everybody within the comfort of their homes would be able to see what is actually going on when it comes to collation of the results straight from the polling station. So I think as a country, we can solve that issue by trying as much as possible to leverage on technology to collate results.
Right. So
if I can come in here to add something on the issue of trust of the EC, immediately after the elections, particular media people engaged me to do an assessment of the EC and to tell whether it will be, a call for his removal will be justified. I said yes, it will be justified. The EC doesn't consciously do anything to address some of these challenges. Joseph is working with CDD. He's engaged with us here, but he's not himself. He's not able to speak freely the way I would speak. I like to believe that when they engage the EC on how to leverage on these issues, because he's suggesting to us that they did that, I like to believe that the EC rejected it. He won't tell us.
Joseph, is that the case?
He can't say it. He can't go back to the office if he can't to sit here and speak like that. I'm an academic.
Joseph, are we leaving it there like that, or you would want to respond?
Okay, so that's about your part.
Okay, that's fine. I clearly get the
conversation. To be sincere, when we engaged the Electoral Commission on that, they were very open. Yeah, they were very open. But one thing that we need to note when it comes to leverage on these things, especially the transmitting of results through technology, we needed some legal framework around that. So there are a whole lot of things that we need to put in place before that action can take place. And we sent a memo to them, and we held several meetings with them. So going forward, hopefully we'll be able to achieve the results that we want.
Okay, that's fine. So a quick one before we move on to other issues has to do with the block of regional coalition, where after the polling station coalition, it moves up to the constituency coalition, then it comes down or up again at the regional block coalition before the national coalition. In the past, it used to be from polling station constituencies, then straight to national. The opposition, now the incoming government, believes that the regional coalition is also another avenue where rigging can happen, and if you want to ensure the fastness of it, because look, right after Doc, as you rightly said from your initial conversation, the political parties from the word go had the various pin sheets from the polling stations, and that was critical to enable them to do an early calculation or tabulation of their data to know the outcome of the result. However, it took the EC so long a time, all in the name of waiting for the regional data to come first. And people are saying that that regional session happens to be a stumbling block to the quick delivery of election results. Hence, it ought to be removed from the entire coalition process. How do you react to that? Let me begin with you, Joseph, before you come in, please. Is it necessary to take it off?
So for the issue of too many collation centers, even the past electoral commissioner, that's Dr. Farijan has already spoken about that at length. So no, when there are too many collation centers from the constituency to the regional to the national, it personally I think is something that we need to do away with, especially the regional one. For the constituency collation centers, hopefully we can keep it for the collation of the parliamentary candidate results. But we need to think of how we can send the results of the polling station straight away to the national, as it is done in other countries like Kenya. So when I support those who think we need to do away with the regional collation center, because we don't need it at the moment, and when there are too many collations, the tensions and everything, unless it gets from the constituency to the regional before it gets to the national, long time waiting for the results. And no, I think it's something we can do away with. And for the presidential one, straight from the polling station, we can send it to the national, or maybe from the polling station to the constituency level, straight to national. We can do away with the regional one.
Okay, right. Doc, do you also share with in the same assertion?
I do. I agree with him. The regional structure is an unnecessary bureaucracy created. You see, generally speaking, the challenge is what you said related to suspicion. The moment you go to a room, a few people are there, although political parties have their representatives there, the rank and file believe that the EC could pull something and change figures. Although it will be terrible. It will be almost impossible, given the fact that the pink sheets have originally been produced at the polling centers. But then, interestingly, as we speak, some MPP parliamentary candidates that have lost, for example, Joseph Adjosafwa's constituency,
Domi Kwabenya.
The gentleman who stood in the name of the MPP is said to have come out with a pink sheet, indicating that the figures he has is different from what has been captured elsewhere. Meanwhile, some NDC officers have also come out to suggest that they informed the Electoral Commission that at the polling stations, unused pink sheets, that the EC officials should write cancel and sign on them, unused pink sheets, and that they refuse to do that. All these things give a cause for people to suspect the EC of always making it possible for people to take advantage of the system. So generally speaking, if you can cut down the number of human agency engagement, the better.
Okay.
If you can cut down the number of human agency engagement, the better. So any new structure that is a nuisance structure could be done away with. But then on this issue of, using technology at the collation, the constituency collation centers, using technologies there, I don't think it needs any legislative instrument to do that. We are counting it. We are putting a TV screen outside for people to see what is going on. An IPAC can take that decision because it becomes subsumed within the same legislative instrument that enables the collation to be made at that place. We don't admit everybody there because there will be no space, physically speaking, for everybody to be there. If you want to broaden transparency of the whole thing, putting a television screen for those who are not in there to see what is happening. If anything at all, the political parties have the pink sheets already. So I don't think the EC was really interested in getting this thing done. They will come up with difficulties, manufacture constraints,
Okay.
manufactured constraints. My distrust of the EC is now this morning, a lawyer of the NDC said something, and I believe it has happened, that the EC has called that a particular constituency's results be cancelled and a rerun, sort of effected. Meanwhile, according to the lawyer, it is only a court that can call for a rerun. So are we suggesting that the EC hasn't got a lawyer and that they don't know the legislative instrument guiding their actions and inactions? All these things are causes for concern, and people rightly believe that the EC has not been politically neutral from the very word go. I am of that school of thought, actually.
Right. Gentlemen, before we...
Hello, Chris.
Yes, sir.
So I would like to make a short clarification or simple one. As regards the reforms that we were seeking, we were actually looking at the transmission of the results from the polling station to the dedicated website by Electoral Commission. And that's what it actually entails some framework around it. Yes, but as regards the projection of the screen, I think going forward is something that we can easily do, as Dr. Machib Watson said, at least just to calm down tensions and also promote transparency.
Okay. Very well noted. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. But before you take a leave of us, we'd like to look at this particular session of the conversation, which has to do with looking at the role of the various stakeholders, i.e. the media, the political parties themselves, the EC. We've touched extensively on the EC, so we may not necessarily go back to the EC, but we'll look at the security personnel as well. We'll also look at the role of various international observers who also came around to at least monitor situation as well. Let's take them one after the other. The role of the security personnel, i.e. the police and the military, despite the fact that we saw some instances where citizens had confrontations with the military, and those particular military are described as attacks from the ruling NPP and stuff like that. But we want to look at generally the role of various stakeholders in ensuring this smooth, peaceful election that we had. Let me begin with you, Joseph Frempon, because you are with CDD, and these were very critical areas that you were really looking at.
Thank you, Chris. So we deployed 97 observers to observe the pre-election phase from October. And the first report that we received, we identified some gaps as regards the issue of voter education. So we realized that it was really low from October. That's our first reports. But getting close to the elections, it actually increased. So the activities of civil society organizations, the Electoral Commission, and all the other stakeholders, NCC, they tried as much as possible to educate the public on the need to vote peacefully. As regards the security, one significant thing that I think was very important has to do with the statement by the military as regards their involvement in the general elections. At least it cleared some doubts, and it gave the specific role that the military will be playing during the elections, that they are not going to be at the polling station. So going forward as a country, the actual roles of all those who will be involved in the election management should be stated clearly. And it shouldn't only be at the top, but it should go down to those personnel involved in the election affairs. So generally speaking, voter education from the beginning was low. It actually increased going into the elections, and the role of the military was also clearly stated. Although during the E-Day, we encountered few challenges in Obuasi and other places. But I think the statement that clearly stated their role was very important.
At CDD, did you record issues of vote buying and vote selling during the elections? looking at the further the special voting we saw in some polling stations where candidates were seen, sharing foods and stuff like that as a form of inducement to the voters.
Yeah, so vote buying is something that is a challenge to our democracy. And we need to address that. Is something that I can't say we didn't even report that the current system we are practicing, is something that people are doing it freely, and they don't have any problem with it, which is actually in itself a problem. Doing something which is a problem, but you don't realize a problem is a problem. So I think we need to address that issue. It's somehow complicated. So going forward, we need to address it. The first report that we released, vote buying was low. So some of us were even surprised at the outcome. But so is it going to continue, or they have changed the tactics of buying the votes? But when the elections were getting close, these things were actually happening. Aside from our report, some of them were too glaring on social media. We could see the videos that they were doing it freely, and they don't feel that what they are doing has effect on our democracy or whatsoever. So vote buying is something we need to pay attention to. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Right. Dr. Amache, quick one. Your reaction to the role of the various stakeholders, media, civil society actors, international observer groups, the security, the Electoral Commission. Well, we've touched on that, and then persons in academia as well in this particular election 2024.
Generally, everybody, came down, became vigilant, and wanted to really make sure that the elections turn out, free and fair, and that the will of the people is what will eventually prevail. And so, just like Joseph said, the security people, right from the very beginning, were concerned because of the developments in elections 2020. But somehow they learned lessons. Actually, we don't understand what happened. Some members of the military came out in a particular constituency in Obuasi. We don't really understand, because the military high command really was clear and assured Ghanaians that they were only to come in upon invitation by the police. And even then, they will demonstrate professionalism. With the police, as much as possible, we want to say that they did what was expected of them. Civil society, CODIO, I think, works with all of them. CDD subsumed within it. And they were there. They were there. The most important thing is that, the political parties themselves know the whole understanding. If something goes wrong and then the elections don't come out as anticipated, people believe that the will of the people, does not really produce a particular outcome, there will be violence. And then over there, the observers will simply be toothless. They will be helpless. They won't be able to do anything. The moment, the unexpected happens and things get out of hand, that is it. So basically, I think the political parties themselves, especially the NDC, that should be commended for the outcome of the current elections. They were open, they engaged the Electoral Commission with anything they had difficulty with, right from the very word go. I call that dialogue, dialoguing with society to produce free and fair elections.
Okay.
And even later, they also informed the EC when they found out that some officers of the EC that had been recruited were known active MPP officers. The EC came out to assure them that they would definitely handle it. So yes, initially the EC was reluctant to respond positively to some of those cases. Eventually they were forced to. Society showed interest, and generally I think things happened the way they did.
Right. Doug, how would you also describe the Ghanaian electorate or voters? At the moment, I listened to the former information minister and current works and housing minister and MP for Fuasin and UB, Kochopon Nkrumah, who says that the political class should listen and dialogue them more. And member of parliament for Norton Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa saying that there is no safe seat in Ghana's parliament now, or in Ghana's constituency now? How would you describe the attitude of the Ghanaian electorate?
You see, we have been in this democratic practice since 1993. We started, openly engaging citizens in 1992, the elections that, was the transition elections. And so obviously people, have come to understand what should come to them, during all these things, and that going to the polls to vote should not be enough. And let me also bring in this element of vote buying. People have become quite sophisticated. People believe, and I myself believe, that one of the things the MPP placed their hopes on was to buy votes, especially in Ashanti region. It didn't work. I don't have any doubt that they went out with their monies, the envelopes and so on and so forth. Here in Ashanti region, the MPP's primaries, members of parliament could pay as much as 10,000 Ghana cedis to a delegate, when you could have getting to 1,000 plus delegates. They were ready to pay. They purchased the right to represent the parties in Ashanti region. So they were definitely unfazed, and they would go out to buy the vote. People demonstrated that, yes, they will get the votes, but if you mismanage the economy, we'll vote against you. I agree with those comments coming from the members of parliament concerning safe seats and the issue as to whether there are even safe seats anywhere again. So that is the situation. People have become sophisticated, yes.
Right. Gentlemen, before we end, we're drawing closer to the end of the conversation. From where both of you sit, are there some key lessons that we ought to learn going into the next elections, from before, during, and after as well? What are some of the key lessons that we ought to learn from election 2020 and election 2024 going into the future? Let me begin with you from CDD, Joseph Frimpong.
Chris, so one thing that we thought would have changed was how there will be no violence at our collation centers. So it's something that's going forward we need to improve as a country. The way our collation, we do our collations at the constituency levels need to be properly done. We should make everybody understand. And as Dr. Machibuati said, when we talk of vigilance, we need to let the people understand what we mean by vigilance and violence at our collation centers. So going forward, as a country, we need to, as much as possible, learn and improve on our collation system.
Right. Doc, yourself, what are some of the key lessons that we ought to learn going into the future, particularly from election 2020, 2024, going into the future?
Well, we believe that one, violence is avoidable, and that is the structures put in place by the EC that really cause the violence, the structures. Currently here in Ghana, the problem, emanates essentially from the constituency coalition centers. And that is where I have difficulty with the Electoral Commission, because I didn't see the commission as consciously looking at that and coming up with a solution to address the problem. I mean, how difficult is it to think around the system and come to an understanding that the whole thing has got to do with suspicion? And that suspicion is something that the EC should expect from the system. And they have a challenge to do what they have to do, demonstrate what we call administrative efficiency in electoral governance. You demonstrate administrative efficiency, and that dissipates, concerns that people have. The issue of this in political neutrality. Any concern that people have, administrative efficiency dissipates that. The challenges that it takes it away. You see the EC as going all out creatively to address. So the EC has not been learning, and I'd like to believe that that should really be the EC commissioner should be made to pay for that. If they are challenged and chased out, I will support that. Two, you can't deceive the people as a politician. You can't deceive the people. People know that their vote is what translates into political authority. So once in office, they want to see the economy improving. They want to see, opportunities for work. That hard work must pay, and that the local currency should be proper currency. It should have weight. People's hard-earned money should take them through the month, and that public officers will also have to learn that they are there to serve society. They are not lords. Generally speaking, I think democracy has something good for Ghana. Democracy has something good for Africa. We can use it to manage our affairs.
Right. So generally speaking, democracy has something good for Ghana. Democracy has something good for Africa, and we can use it to manage our affairs. These are the very words of Dr. Amache Boateng, political science lecturer with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, Kumasi. And also we're joined on this particular conversation by Joseph Frempong, who is the project officer with the Center for Democratic Development Ghana, CDD Ghana. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time with me on the program Citizens Are on West Africa Democracy Radio.
Thank you too.